fellow adventurers. This is darkfireslide, and welcome to another Pathfinder Kingmaker guide. Today, we're going to be talking about how to build your archer here in Kingmaker. Now, I've seen a lot of threads, and this is another idea I get from the Steam forums. I've seen quite a few threads actually where people don't really know how to build an archer properly, and maybe you've wanted to play one. You want to reenact your favorite Legolas memories of the Lord of the Rings movies or something. Or archers are just kind of cool in general, aren't they? Well, let's talk about how to build one in Pathfinder to make it effective. So, first of all, when it comes to race, I think the primary races that you're going to want to look at for an archer are going to be human. Elf is a decent race, although their lack of constitution does make them a little less ideal, and their intelligence bonus doesn't matter all that much, but for role-playing reasons, the extra skill points can be kind of nice. An odd and unexpected form, this will be a more accurate but less damaging archer, is in the form of the halfling. Their small size gives them a bonus +1 to hit, and their bonus to dexterity is certainly going to help, although their lack of strength is going to make them do less damage overall than a human or an elf in the similar role. And the Azamar heritage that gives you a bonus to dexterity and wisdom is actually going to be an excellent ranger archer. So when you're building an archer, you probably want to be one of these three races, if I may suggest it myself. We're going to look at human, of course, because they're the most flexible race. Humans can do everything. So let's just go ahead and go and pop into a human. Alright, so the two main classes, I would say, that are good at being an archer and like who focus on it, who are very skilled with the bow, and you want them to just specifically, like, not through like, I cast a 9th level spell on myself and now I'm good at archery. If you want them to like be just like, I'm good at archery because my class is good at it, the two classes you're going to look at are the ranger, which you may have expected just because of, you know, stereotypes, but also the fighter is possibly the best archer in the game. So let's go ahead and talk about these two classes at length, what each of them bring to the table, and how to build an archer that's going to be effective and deal a lot of damage, because archers are really, really good in Pathfinder. So let's go ahead and start with our fighter here. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to put your bonus point into dexterity. For some reason, they suggest that you go with strength and constitution. Well, for fighter that makes sense. I thought we were on the ranger. But anyway, let's go ahead and we want to raise our dexterity to 19 to start. We want a strength of at least 16. A constitution of 12 will suffice. Now, if we're going to min-max a little bit here, I will go ahead and call it min-maxing. Doesn't really matter at this point whether it's min-maxing or optimizing. If you want to be the best that you can be, here's what I suggest. So there are multiple ways that we can build this, potentially. If we dump, like, everything, we could just squeeze out that 18 in strength, have that 19 in dexterity, and you may be wondering to yourself, why do I need such a high strength if I'm just using a bow? And the answer to that is that if you want to just be a pure damage dealer, you'll be adding your strength to using a composite bow, which is a type of bow that exists in the game. It's very common, actually. After a certain point, it's actually really hard to find a longbow that isn't one. But basically, you can add your strength modifier when using that kind of longbow. And so, the higher of a strength you have, the better you're going to be at it. And the fighter has the luxury of not needing any other stats, really. This is a perfectly acceptable build for an archer. Archers tend not to get targeted by crowd control spells. Archers tend not to get attacked very much if you position them properly. And so this is a stat spread right here that is perfectly acceptable. If you wanted to be a little bit more well-rounded, you'd bump your constitution up to 14, and then go ahead and get your wisdom up to 14 as well to get that will save looking a lot better. And obviously, if you don't want to be completely min-max, that's fine too. You'll want to probably dump down your dexterity and maybe raise your charisma instead, or your constitution. Now you have a +1 charisma to work with, and you can swap this charisma score for an intelligence score, and that way you have a flaw, but you're also decent and a little bit more well-rounded as an individual. But anyway, so that's how you build an archer in that direction. Skills are relatively unimportant except for roleplay purposes. So how do we want to start with an archer? Well, your first thought may be to go to weapon focus, and that is a smart way to think, but the better thing that we're going to need to pick up to play an archer is first we need to pick up the point blank shot feat, because this is a nice +1 to attack and damage, which is objectively better than weapon focus as long as you're fighting within 30 feet, which is a very common thing in Pathfinder. So, you know, and the early levels especially, this is a good feat to position yourself. And but the main reason we pick up Point Blank Shot is because by taking it, we unlock another feat called Precise. Let's see, actually, I think it's in our recommended. At least it should be. Here we go. So you have to refresh the page. But anyway, we've got Precise Shot now. Now this is a rule that isn't explicitly mentioned except in load screens, and even then it's vague at best. When you shoot at someone who is engaged in melee combat, so your fighter in the front, your tank, is fighting somebody else, you take a -4 to your attack roll when shooting at that person, normally. So by taking this feat, you are negating a -4 penalty, and you can shoot at whoever you want. And so, whether you're playing a ranger or you're playing a fighter, you want to pick up Precise Shot at first level. You know, if you're playing a human, you know, take it immediately. So let's get a little bit more nuanced here. So the ranger, and we'll discuss this again when we cover the ranger. At second level, the ranger unlocks his combat style, and presumably for an archer, you're going to pick archery. You can actually take Precise Shot at second level without qualifying for it by taking Point Blank Shot first. But the thing is, Point Blank Shot is such a decent feat in the first place, you might as well. And if you're a human, you can still pick up Precise Shot at first level, and then at second level, you can get the Rapid Shot feat. But the nice thing about a human fighter, or even just a fighter that is not a human, is you can pick up Point Blank and Precise at first level, no problem. So that's kind of an advantage there, is that at the very first level you're going to be able to work out the gate with this build. Now you don't stay at first level very long in Kingmaker, and that's fine. So what do you do after you get these two feats? Because these are basically necessary. Well, you'll want to take one of two feats. One is Rapid Shot. This lets you take a -2 to your attack rolls to get a additional attack per round at your highest base attack bonus. So the reason that this is good, obviously, is that you get one extra chance to hit. So if you roll a bad die, you can roll again. And the thing is, this feat is actually kind of iffy at the earlier levels because a -2 to your attack penalty is pretty brutal. So what I actually recommend taking instead at first level is Deadly Aim, because it's only a -1 penalty. But you get a +2 to your damage when you do this. So even though you're still taking a penalty, the damage is much more consistent with Deadly Aim, whereas with Rapid Shot I found that it can be a lot less consistent, and that can be a more frustrating feat to take. So of the two, I actually recommend Deadly Aim, but both are actually perfectly viable. It's just that I think Deadly Aim is slightly better. But in the end, you'll actually want to end up taking both of these, especially once you start getting to 5th, 7th level, because eventually your attack bonus will get so high with this build, with dexterity building items and spells and such, that the attack penalty starts to not matter as much, except against very, very high AC enemies, of which there are a decent number in Kingmaker for sure. But against most enemies, you'll be able to crank out a lot of damage by combining these two feats, by getting that extra damage from Deadly Aim, as well as having an extra attack per round from Rapid Shot, which, by the way, stacks with the Haste spell. So if you are using Rapid Shot and Haste, you take a -2 penalty to all 3 of the attacks, but you're getting 3 attacks at your highest base attack bonus when you have that all together, which is a lot of attack roll chances, and actually makes, when you get to 8th level, and I'll go ahead and show the unavailable feats here. When you get to 8th level specifically, and you get your 8th point of base attack bonus from being either a fighter or a ranger, you'll definitely want to pick up Improved Critical if you're running down the Rapid Shot path, because the thing is, Improved Critical improves the critical hit range of your weapon for a longbow it'll be from 20 to 19. So it's only an increase of 1 on the dice roll, but you're going from a 5% chance to threaten a critical hit to a 10% chance. And this actually drastically increases your attack bonus, or your overall damage output, I should say, whether or not it may seem like that initially, because having that extra crit chance, the thing is, longbows do they do triple damage on a critical hit, and this multiplies the damage bonus you get from Deadly Aim. So At 8th level, you'll be taking a -3 penalty when using deadly aim, but you'll be getting a +6 to damage. So that means that if you get a critical hit while deadly aiming, you have a +18 to damage. So you have an 18 damage base plus whatever strength you have, and by that point it'll probably be something like anywhere from +4 to +6. We'll say +5, kind of average that out. So that's another 15 damage. So minimum on a critical hit, you're doing 33 damage plus 3d8 damage. So that'll be anywhere from 36 to like, geez, that's 33 plus 24, so that's 57. So anywhere from 33 to 57 damage on a critical hit, which is just a lot of damage. It's really good, especially because you're attacking from range. So that's just really, really awesome. And the thing is, so you may be asking yourself, well, why would I pick this over a rogue when a rogue can sneak attack at range and do a lot of damage? The thing is, a fighter and a ranger are going to have a much higher hit chance because their base attack bonus is higher. So when picking between the two, if you want a more like ambush sniper type character, you'll actually want to pick a rogue. But if you're going for just the pure like skilled archer who isn't super stealthy but is like he has the truest aim, he is the most accurate, you'll want to go with either of these classes. So anyway, another feat that you'll want to be looking for is many shot. Many shot allows you to it requires rapid shot first, which is fine. You'll want to be taking that anyway. But once you get to a base attack bonus of 6, you'll want to take many shot because basically what it does is your first attack deals double damage every round, whether or not you're rapid shotting or deadly aim. And damage bonuses from high strength and things like deadly aim also still apply. So if you do like 1d8, +4 from your strength, and then plus another +4 from your base attack bonus when you get this, that'll be 1d8 +8, maybe 1d8 +9 if you've got a +1 longbow, which you probably will, and when you add that all together, that's 2d8 +18 damage, minimum 19 damage, maximum of like 35. That's just on your first shot, right? So you'll be doing upwards of 50 to 60 damage per round, and unlike a two-handed fighter, you get the luxury of being in the back. And these are all things that both the ranger and the fighter can do pretty much equally effectively, depending on how you build these characters, of course. So what are the so yeah, those are the things that you'll want to be looking for those classes, and eventually you'll get some other things. Like let's see, where is? I think it's improved. Yeah, improved precise shot, and at 11th level you kind of cap it out. So if something is concealed, and there are a lot of concealed enemies in this game. Actually, a lot of the primal enemies you'll run into have concealment. This lets you ignore that, and so you're just trying to hit their AC, which is really, really awesome, as you might expect. And I'm sure there are a couple of other feats that I'm glossing over here. Maybe, yeah, Point Blank Master is another one, but you need, that's a fighter feat as well, which makes you not provoke when you're in melee, which is actually a pretty huge advantage, I would say. Apart from that, I don't think there are any other particularly relevant archery feats. Basically from here, where you'll want to go is just go into critical focus and critical mastery. Let's see, I think can Ranger even take that? Yeah, okay, so even Ranger can take that, because this will allow your critical hits as a ranged character to kind of excel. And that's pretty much because, and the reason I'm looking through these now is because I know what I would say to you to build in the pen and paper game, but I wasn't exactly 100% sure on the actual feats that were in Kingmaker, so my apologies for not researching that 100% before making this video. But what I will say is that, yeah, after taking improved critical, you'll want to go down the critical focus and then critical mastery trees. So all kinds of fun stuff there with all kinds of crazy critical hit based debuffs that you can apply to people. And one last feat, if you have the room for it in your build, that you'll want to consider taking if you just want to be really, really good at archery, is that Ranger and Fighter especially, are both going to want to take weapon-focused longbow. The reason for this is that a +1 to your attack rolls is a lot more significant than it might seem. It's a 5% overall chance higher to hit your opponents, basically, because of the way the dice roll mechanics work. But when you stack this with other attack bonus buffs, like things like Inspire Courage, higher dexterity, etc., it really compounds and makes it even better to try to hit things, and just improves your overall damage by a lot. So anyway, those are what I would say are the primary two types of archers. You'll want to either roll with a fighter or you'll want to roll with a ranger, and those are the feats that you'll basically want to take on both classes. So let's talk about the difference between the fighter and the ranger when it comes to ranged combat. So the main difference between the two is that the ranger is going to have a lot more utility abilities, whereas the fighter is going to be in a one-on-one duel a better archer. So the fighter is definitely the better archer, and the reason for this is because he gets stacking weapon focus bonuses. So he gets weapon focus at level 1, or whenever he decides to pick it up first, and then later he gets greater weapon focus, which further improves his attack bonus. So this is going to give him overall a +2 to his attack bonus just from feats, not including obviously his items, base attack bonus, weapon enchantments, etc. So he's going to have just a higher base chance to hit all the time, constantly. There's nothing really required. And the same thing applies. At 4th level, you unlock weapon specialization, and obviously you'll be taking this with the longbow after you take weapon focus with it. This is unlocked at 4th level, gives you a +2 to your damage with longbows, and this is again multiplied on a critical hit. And then at 12th level, you can pick up greater weapon specialization with the longbow, which is going to give you +4 damage, which is just really, really awesome because again, it's multiplied on critical hits. So you'll do automatic 12 damage, plus whatever you're doing with deadly aim, plus whatever you're doing from strength. So the fighter just has always on, always really high damage abilities. And one more feat before I forget. The Hammer of the Gap feat, if you can fit this feat into your build, awesome. If not, then it's not a big deal. This feat is okay because it works with Rapid Shot pretty well, but it's especially good at higher levels when you're making several attacks per round and you're hasted, and if you attack 6 times a round and your last attack does +6 damage, that's pretty good, especially because this damage again gets multiplied on a critical hit, which is all the more reason to invest in improved critical and critical focus. But that's pretty much all there is to it. There'll be room in the fighter's build to pick up a couple of save feats, things like dodge or toughness here and there. Although overall, I would say that archery is a very feat-heavy playstyle, so that's something you'll definitely want to be on the lookout for. So let's talk about how the ranger kind of differentiates himself from the fighter. The ranger has a lot more utility abilities, and what I should also mention especially is that the ranger actually has options for archetypes apart from just the standard ranger, whereas a fighter archer must be the regular fighter because none of the archetypes work with it, and actually all of them actively hinder the archer playstyle. So you'll want to stick with regular fighter if you want to do the fighter route for an archer. Now the ranger has multiple options. Pretty much every single ranger and ranger archetype fits really well into the archer ability. Ranger is a really nice, well-rounded selection, especially because it gets an animal companion at 4th level, of which you can take the boon companion feat, which allows you to get full animal companion progression, which turns it into a really, really nice class feature overall, I would say. And their ability to start casting spells at 4th level using their wisdom stat is also going to make them very effective. They have a lot of self-buff spells, including a very important 1st level spell called Hurricane Bow, which raises the attack damage of your bow from 1d8 to 2d6 damage. Now this is important because when you go from that high of a damage dice, that still gets multiplied on critical hits. So instead of doing 3d8 damage on a critical hit, you're doing 6d6 damage on a critical hit, which is a lot of damage, especially compared to 3d8. So definitely something to watch out for. You're basically improving your damage potential by 50%, although your overall average damage is only going up by probably about 30 or 40%, just to throw out some preliminary percentages there. The ranger's favorite enemy, if you've played the game already one time through, and so maybe you're thinking of an archer for your second playthrough, the ranger's favorite enemy can really help with certain stages of the game. Magical Beast is a really good one for this campaign. Human is a really good for this one for this campaign. And Monstrous Humanoid's not a bad pick either. And when you get that favorite enemy bonus, the ranger will actually outshine a fighter rather considerably while fighting his favorite enemy. But again, the problem is a fighter's abilities are always on, a ranger's abilities are a little bit more situational. Now, as for the 3 archetypes, the freebooter is going to be able to basically call out enemies for his allies to focus on, improving their weapon attack and damage rolls against his freebooter's Bane target, which is really nice. He loses out on the animal companion, which is a bit of a disappointment, but you still get the same combat style, evasion, and quarry abilities. So overall, I think the regular rangers is better just because of the animal companion, but this is still a perfectly fine archetype. Flame Warden and Stormwalker, in my opinion, if I'm reading this correctly, yeah. So the thing is, as far as I know, you can use Touch of Flame to turn your weapon into a flaming weapon, for 1 minute, which is good. As opposed to the Stormwalker, you can do the same thing, except it only affects ranged weapons. And I've spent a lot of time analyzing these two archetypes, and the way they appear to work, I haven't actually tested them, so this is mostly theory crafting. But the way that these would appear to work is that there's basically no reason to take Stormwalker because the Flame Warden can do everything the Stormwalker can for the most part, except they get a little bit more, special abilities to work with. Both still lose out on the Animal Companion, which is a little bit disappointing again, because it can be so useful having that little bit of extra melee damage to kind of block for the Ranger since he is going to be a ranged combatant. But overall, pretty much all these archetypes are completely viable as a ranged character, as an archer. But again, when it comes down to it, the main difference between a ranger and a fighter is that a fighter is always going to be working at peak condition, whereas a ranger is going to be situationally much better. So you have to ask yourself, do I want to do the micromanagement involved to make the ranger truly shine, or am I making my fighter archer as kind of a backup character, kind of maybe like a mercenary to work with. And another thing that the fighter does better than the ranger is that the ranger, to cast his spells, needs a wisdom stat, usually of at least 12 to 14, depending on whether or not you have an amulet that increases his, or a headband rather, that increases his wisdom, because otherwise the fighter is going to have more points to put into his strength and dexterity, and so he can actually further outshine the ranger in that regard, as long as he's dumping his stats, basically. Now there's one last true ranged archer type character, and that is actually a paladin archetype, the Divine Hunter. This class is alright. I won't delve into specifics. It's basically a paladin that can smite with ranged weapons, which is pretty nice. He gets Precise Shot for free at first level, which, as we discussed, is a very important feat. But for the most part, the thing that's weird about the Divine Hunter is that he's still pretty much a paladin. He has a lot of smiting abilities. He's still immune to diseases and supernatural diseases. He's not immune to. I don't think he has the Courage aura, which is fine because it's fine. But apart from that, I don't think that this class really stacks up as well as the pure archer. This is an interesting class for sure because it can still channel positive energy. So this class can actually be really good as far as healing goes, for a little bit of extra divine firepower, especially since this class still gets paladin spells. But that being said, I think that the fighter and the ranger are both better actual archers, just because of the feats they get and the overall abilities that they get that kind of support that playstyle. That being said, the Divine Hunter is a perfectly fine archetype, especially as a secondary fighter, which is what you should be using for archers anyway. And that's kind of a final caveat here. If typically in a 4-man party, which we don't have to deal with in Kingmaker, an archer is kind of a bad choice just because, you need someone in the front to take damage. Pretty much regardless of the party, and especially in Kingmaker when the encounters are so tough, you really need that melee combatant up there taking damage, having high AC, etc. And that's not really something that pretty much anything other than the fighter with the 4th level point blank mastery feat can really do. But even then, a fighter with a bow isn't going to be as well armored as a fighter with a shield, or sometimes even a fighter in heavy armor. Now, one last bonus that the fighter gets over the ranger is going to be armor training. And this is really, really good just because, you get an increase to the maximum dexterity bonus for your armor, which means that eventually you can kind of wear medium armor even as an archer, just because your dexterity will be so high, but your bonus will have kept up with you, and especially once you get some of the mithril armors in the game, this ability really shines. And so a fighter archer is actually going to have really high AC still. And adding to the weapon specialization and weapon focus we already talked about, weapon training with fighters is further going to add to that overall consistency, especially once they can increase the at 20th level, they can increase the critical multiplier on their longbow, going from ×3 to ×4, which is just awesome. Um, and you automatically confirm all critical threats, which is, again, just insane if you've gone the critical hit route. So, yeah, in general, overall, be sure to pick a precise shot so that you don't miss, because otherwise you definitely will. Be sure to pick up a lot of critical hit feats if you're a fighter, get weapon focus and specialization, and overall, that should get you pretty much set on what is, in my opinion, a really strong choice in Kingmaker, just because archers make a really great 5th character. So if your baseline party is, for example, a fighter, a rogue, a wizard, and a cleric, the archer as a ranger or a fighter makes for a really good 5th character, because they're able to deal a crap ton of damage, and they're sitting there in the bag safely, just plunking away and completely demolishing things. Anyway, I hope this guide overall was helpful to helping you figure out maybe you wanted to play an archer, and this gave you a general idea of what to look for. Let me know what kind of guides you guys want to see in the future. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you want to see more in the future. And be sure to check out my Patreon if you're interested in supporting the channel. Link in the description. Thank you guys for watching. I'll see you on the next one.